Dr. Lisbeth Varga watched the star outside her window with the kind of grim fascination usually reserved for train wrecks and bad reality TV. The dying behemoth was a pulsating swirl of impending doom, and today, like every day, it seemed to pulse just a bit closer to its inevitable explosion, or their inevitable death, whichever came first. Maybe we should charge admission, she mused, taking another gulp of coffee that tasted like it had been filtered through an old boot. Let people watch it incinerate us in real time. Could help with the funding gap. Captain Arlo Drayton snorted, his eyes fixed on a console that blinked with more red lights than the Christmas tree he'd never had. If there's anyone left to buy tickets, sure. But I doubt the aliens are into spectator sports. Dr. Varga sighed, tossing her mug into the recycler with a thud. The damn thing just had to be programmed to make that noise, reminding her it wouldn't break no matter how hard she threw it. They're more into just picking our bones clean, aren't they? She tapped a couple of keys on her terminal, bringing up the same report she'd looked at 100 times. Numbers, predictions, all telling the same story. They were screwed. The station, Prometheus, was a decaying hunk of metal orbiting a star on the edge of its patience. The engineers had built it to last, forgetting that anything a human built, the universe could destroy faster. The structure groaned in protest as Varga moved to the next console. You hear that, Arlo? Even the station's complaining now. It's just trying to upstage you, he replied, swiveling his chair around. His uniform was scruffy, the badge proclaiming his rank as captain hanging by a thread. You've been nagging it for years. Maybe I'd quit if something changed for once, she said, shaking her head. But no, same old star death, same old alien threat. Just once I'd like a little variety in my apocalypse. Drayton chuckled, leaning back and propping his boots up on the nearest console. The gesture would have set off alarms in other places, but here it just meant you were saving wear on your heels. Well, we could always open a chat with the alien envoy, see if they are interested in a truce. Oh sure, Varga said, rolling her eyes. Right after I finish my heart-to-heart with the star. You do that, Drayton said with a grin. Tell it we come in peace. Maybe it'll spare us a while longer. Varga rubbed at her temples. And maybe pigs will pilot the next generation of space shuttles. A shudder ran through the station, rattling the consoles and stealing everyone's breath. For a moment, the tension in the room was as thick as the dust in the corners. Then the lights flickered and all hell broke loose. What in the hell was that? Drayton barked, leaping to his feet. A reminder that we're not on a pleasure cruise, Varga snapped back, fingers flying over the keys. Just another dose of reality. The star's throwing a tantrum again. Tell it to quit, he said, standing over her shoulder and staring at the screens with the intensity of a man who'd given up on hope, but not on sarcasm. It's bad for morale. The data spilled across the screen, a jumble of numbers and warnings. Varga sorted through it with practiced ease, the way you might sift through junk mail looking for the one bill you absolutely couldn't ignore. Looks like a solar flare, a big one. Naturally, Drayton said, rubbing his chin, because why not? It's like the universe thinks we need more motivation, Varga muttered. Just give us another kick while we're down. Drayton nodded. That's the spirit. Let's kick back. They both knew what that meant. Batten down the hatches, hunker in the bunker, and hope like hell the shield generators didn't cough out their last breath before the flare did. Better give the crew a heads up, Varga said, pulling up the comms panel. They'll want to brace for the end of all things. Yeah, like they're not already, Drayton muttered, moving to the comms himself. This is your captain speaking, he said into the intercom with a voice that was both authoritative and profoundly bored. We're expecting some turbulence. Please keep your arms and legs inside the vehicle until we're no longer in imminent danger of fiery death. Varga smirked as she keyed in the sequences to activate the emergency shields. And here I thought you'd gone soft. Never, he replied, shooting her a sideways glance. Just saving the good speeches for when they matter, like when the aliens finally knock on our door, or when hell freezes over, Drayton said with a grin. The station shuddered again, as if in agreement. The shields hummed to life with a sound like 1,000 angry bees deciding they were unionizing. "Well, they're holding for now," Varga said, though her voice lacked conviction. "Got any other bright ideas for today?" Drayton shrugged, his grin still in place. "Thought I'd take a walk around the hull, maybe enjoy a nice solar tan." "You should bring some sunscreen," Varga said, ignoring the fact they'd both be crispier than a strip of bacon if they tried. "Or at least a good book. Dystopian fiction, perhaps?" he asked, raising an eyebrow. "They might not be the best choice right now," Varga replied, turning back to her console. "Too much like reality. You'd rather something light and fluffy." "Arlo," she said, deadpan, "if I wanted something light and fluffy, I wouldn't be on this station." He chuckled, looking out the viewport at the swirling chaos beyond. "True, but it's not all bad. We've got front row seats to the universe's biggest fireworks display." Varga nodded, her expression softening ever so slightly. "Just wish it came with a better soundtrack." "Can't have everything," Drayton replied, his eyes gleaming with that strange mix of defeat and defiance that defined them all. "But at least we've got each other for company." They stood there for a moment, watching the star that had once been their beacon of hope and was now their probable executioner. The silence stretched out, comfortable in its familiarity. "Think we'll make it through this one?" Varga asked, breaking the spell. Drayton shrugged again, ever the pragmatist. "We'll find out soon enough, won't we?" As if to punctuate his words, the station shivered once more, a reminder of the precariousness of their existence. Somewhere, deep within the metal bowels of Prometheus, something creaked ominously, and a low hum echoed through the air. "If not," Varga said, adjusting her glasses, "I hope whoever finds the wreckage appreciates the irony." Drayton laughed, a sound both genuine and tinged with the madness of their situation. "Oh, I'm sure they will." He clapped her on the shoulder, a brief gesture of camaraderie. "Let's get back to work. If we're going out, might as well make it hard for them to clean up." Varga nodded, taking her place by the console again. "Let's give them hell, shall we?" "Hell's what we do best," Drayton agreed, rolling his shoulders and settling into the seat beside her. "And who knows, maybe we'll surprise ourselves and pull through. Stranger things have happened." They both knew the odds. They'd been written in the stars long before Prometheus had taken orbit. But as they set to work, side by side in the flickering half-light, there was a sense of determination that belied the hopelessness of their situation. Outside, the star blazed on, indifferent to the struggles of the tiny creatures daring to defy its wrath. And somewhere beyond, the aliens watched with eyes as cold and uncaring as the vacuum of space, waiting for their chance to strike. But for now, Dr. Lisbeth Varga and Captain Arlo Drayton had a station to keep afloat and a crew to protect. The universe could wait its turn. "We've still got time," Varga said, her voice steady despite it all. "Let's make the most of it." Drayton nodded, a grim smile playing on his lips. "Time is what we make of it," he replied, echoing the old adage with a twist of his own. "And we've got plenty of that." Together they turned their attention back to the task at hand, two human souls in a sea of chaos, defiant against the dying of the light. "Doctor." Lisbeth Varga peered at the flickering screen, her eyes narrowing at the equations scrolling past. It was like trying to read poetry in Klingon, chaotic, incomprehensible, and likely to give you a headache if you stared too long. But somewhere in this mess was a thread of brilliance, a sliver of hope wrapped in mathematical gibberish. "Arlo, you might want to get over here," she called out, her voice inflected with the same mix of exasperation and reluctant excitement that accompanied every eureka moment in her life. "I think I've found something." Captain Arlo Drayton's nonchalant stroll over to her station belied the tension that had woven itself into the fabric of their days. "Please tell me it's the recipe for synthetic whiskey." "Could really use a drink." "Better," Varga replied, though her smile was as brittle as a dehydrated cracker. "I've been working on a theory, something that could stabilize the station's power systems." "About time someone did," Drayton said, looming over her with a skeptical eyebrow raised. "What's the catch?" Does it require sacrificing a goat under a blood moon? Not unless the goat is fluent in quantum physics, Varga shot back, tapping the screen. This is a new application of physics, something that might just stop this tin can from becoming a cosmic barbecue skewer. Drayton squinted at the screen like it was written in hieroglyphs. And here I thought quantum mechanics was just for folks with more brains than sense. You sure it's safe? Define safe, Varga said with a shrug. If it doesn't work, we're toast anyway. But if it does, we might actually have a fighting chance. Great. So it's a coin toss. Drayton rubbed his chin, contemplating the prospect of placing their collective fate in the hands of a theory untamed by practical tests. And how does this miracle work? This, she pointed to a diagram that looked like a bowl of spaghetti was having an existential crisis, is supposed to absorb and redistribute the energy from the star. If we can harness it, we stabilize the power systems and maybe stop the station from shaking itself to bits. Sounds like it could also turn us into the universe's biggest bug zapper. Varga chuckled darkly. If we're lucky. All right, Drayton said with a resigned sigh. Let's see if we can keep Prometheus from going up in flames. What do we need? Someone with a death wish to run the initial tests, she replied, grinning. Perfect. I'll make sure to nominate one of the interns. The two of them set to work, the air buzzing with that familiar mix of dread and daring that accompanied every new scientific leap, and the occasional leap into the abyss. They routed power through alternate conduits, reconfigured algorithms, and prayed to any cosmic deity who might be listening that they weren't about to accidentally invent the galaxy's first self-immolating space station. As the final sequences were keyed in, Varga took a step back, wiping her palms on her coat. Moment of truth, Drayton nodded. If this goes south, I want it noted that I was always skeptical. No worries, Varga said, rolling her eyes. I'll etch it on your tombstone. With a press of a button, the station system's word to life in a symphony of mechanical groans and electric hums. The lights flickered, consoles blinked, and for a moment it felt like they were caught in the throes of a cosmic seizure. Here goes nothing, Drayton muttered, crossing his arms and waiting for either glory or disaster. The station shuddered once more, like a drunk trying to regain its balance, and then silence. The kind of silence that wasn't just the absence of sound, but the presence of something much worse, anticipation. Did it work? Drayton asked, his voice a low whisper. Varga checked the readings, her expression shifting from skepticism to cautious optimism. It's stabilizing. The energy levels are holding steady. Drayton let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Well, I'll be damned. Not yet, Varga replied, her fingers dancing over the controls like a pianist on a caffeine high. We've still got to monitor it, but this could actually work. The moment of triumph was cut short by an alarm blaring with all the subtlety of a siren at a heavy metal concert. A familiar, dreaded noise that made the hairs on the back of their necks stand up. Why does that sound like trouble? Drayton asked, already knowing the answer. Because it is, Varga said, her eyes scanning the incoming data. Looks like we pinged something we shouldn't have. Aliens? Drayton guessed, because of course it was. Seems like our little science project caught their attention, Varga confirmed, her tone bitterly amused. Drayton shook his head. Of course they'd notice. Can't even sneeze out here without them wanting to know what kind of virus it is. So what's the plan, Captain? Varga asked, folding her arms. Want me to send them an apology card? Sure, Drayton said, deadpan. Include a coupon for a free extermination of their choice. The alarms continued their relentless serenade as both of them returned to their consoles, the flickering lights casting shadows like grim specters. Looks like they are on an intercept course, Varga noted, her fingers gliding across the console. We've got some time before they get here, but not much. Time to make our move, Drayton said, his voice steady despite the dire situation. Let's see if we can give them the runaround long enough to figure out how to keep this station in one piece. Varga nodded, her mind already racing with calculations and contingencies. We might be able to use the star's energy to mask our presence, make it harder for them to get a lock. Drayton gave her a sidelong glance. Bold move. You sure it won't just light us up like a neon sign? Not sure about anything right now, she admitted, a wry smile tugging at her lips. But if it comes down to a choice between a flashy death and a quiet one, I say let's go out with a bang. Always knew you were a show-off, Drayton said with a chuckle. Someone's got to keep life interesting around here, Varga replied, her hands already flying over the controls to initiate the plan. The station's systems groaned in protest, the lights flickering ominously as they made their move. The star's energy flared around them, swallowing the station in a swirling cocoon of radiation. It was a hell of a gamble, but they were running out of options and luck. These maneuvers never end well in the simulations, Drayton remarked, his voice laced with sardonic humor. Good thing this is reality then, Varga quipped, her attention fixed on the displays. The moment stretched into eternity, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. And then, against all odds, the alarm silenced, the consoles steadying as the alien ships veered off course, their sensors blinded by the star's fury. Did we just? Drayton began, but the words were caught somewhere between disbelief and reluctant hope. We did, Varga confirmed, her smile broadening into a full-blown grin. Looks like they lost us. She let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Looks like we're not on tonight's menu. For now, Drayton cautioned, though his tone was tinged with relief. But we've bought ourselves some time. With a nod, Varga collapsed back into her chair, exhaustion mingling with exhilaration. Not a bad day's work, she said, turning slightly to meet Drayton's eyes. Though I could do without the encore, Drayton chuckled, a sound filled with the kind of grim satisfaction that came from dancing on the edge and living to tell the tale. Don't worry. The universe never lets us rest for long. As the station settled into a temporary calm, they both sat in silence, the weight of what they'd just accomplished settling over them like an invisible shroud. They'd managed to stave off disaster, if only for a little while longer, but they both knew the reprieve was temporary. The universe was vast, unforgiving, and endlessly creative in its attempts to snuff them out. But for now, they'd managed to keep the darkness at bay. So, Drayton said, leaning back in his chair with a lazy grin. What do we do for an encore? Varga chuckled, the sound quickly turning into a full-throated laugh. I don't know, she admitted. I've never been good with sequels. Hopefully the critics are kinder this time, Drayton said, the twinkle in his eyes a mixture of amusement and determination. They both knew what lay ahead. More challenges, more threats, and more of the same old universe trying to wipe them from existence. But they also knew they'd face it together, two souls refusing to be extinguished in the vast, cold expanse of space. And maybe, just maybe, they'd get a chance to rewrite a few of those odds stacked against them. Let's just hope we get to make it up as we go along, Varga said, settling back into her chair and letting the tension seep away. Drayton nodded, the corner of his mouth quirking up in a smile. Wouldn't have it any other way. Together, they turned their attention back to the flickering screens, their minds already crafting plans and contingencies for the unknown threats lurking beyond the stars. But for the moment they allowed themselves a brief respite, a moment of peace amid the chaos. And in that fleeting, fragile peace, they found the resolve to keep fighting, snatching victory from the jaws of the universe's relentless indifference. For now, at least, they'd defied the darkness. The alarm blared again, this time with a rhythm that screamed attention. You're screwed. A sound Drayton was all too familiar with. He glanced at Varga, who was muttering curses under her breath as she worked her fingers over the controls with the finesse of someone diffusing an armed nuke with a toothpick. Another love letter from our friendly neighborhood aliens, Drayton asked, leaning against the console like a tired bartender at last call. She snorted, her eyes not leaving the screens. Looks like it. This time they're being a bit more explicit with their threats. Explicit how? Are we talking a strongly worded letter or more of a polite invitation to die horribly? Varga's fingers paused and she glanced at him with a half-smile. The second one, they've brought a few more friends along for the party. Drayton's day just kept getting better. Ah, a fleet. Tell me, are they here to play charades or something more explosive? They want us to stop our unauthorized energy experiments or, face instant annihilation, she replied, the sarcasm dripping from her voice as thick as the station's recycled sludge. Of course they do. Can't have the humans having a good time after all, Drayton said. He tapped a few buttons on his console, bringing up the alien fleet's trajectory on the main screen. And who's the ringmaster this time? Varga brought up a profile. If a scowling alien mugshot and a list of war crimes could be considered a profile. General Zarkath, with more apostrophes in his name than any creature needed, stared back at them. A face only a mother, or perhaps a particularly empathetic prison warden, could love. Meet General Zarkath, Varga said with mock enthusiasm. Spent a good chunk of his career making sure our kind doesn't reproduce too much. Drayton leaned closer to the screen. He's got the kind of expression that suggests his face might crack if he ever smiled. Varga nodded. Seems like the type who eats nails for breakfast and doesn't bother with milk. Fine. Let's see what his latest ultimatum looks like, Drayton said. He opened the communication channel, expecting either a demand or a creative insult. The latter would be a nice change of pace. The screen flickered, and Zarkath's face appeared, complete with the sneer of someone who just walked into a room full of people he despised. Humans of the station Prometheus, he began, his voice a grating baritone that seemed to drag across Drayton's nerves like a rusty saw. Your reckless energy experiments threaten the stability of this sector. Cease your activities immediately or face the consequences. Wow, he sounds friendly, Drayton quipped, muting the channel for a moment. Think he wants to join us for tea? Varga chuckled, leaning back in her chair. Probably prefers it with a side of destruction. Drayton unmuted the call. Greetings, General Zarkath, Captain Drayton here. I'd love to talk about your concerns, but unfortunately we don't have any cheese to go with that wine. Zarkath's eyes narrowed, a dangerous glint sparking within. You mock us at your peril, human. Our forces are ready to obliterate your station. Typical, Varga whispered to Drayton, her voice filled with a mixture of irritation and amusement. Always ready for a fight, never ready for a civil discussion. Drayton nodded, pretending to consider Zarkath's threat. Let me get this straight, General. You're upset because we're trying to keep our station from becoming a large, floating coffin. And your solution is to turn it into debris. Your actions have potential repercussions beyond your primitive understanding, Zarkath snapped, clearly losing patience. This is your final warning. Well, we'd love to comply, Drayton said, his voice laden with sarcasm, but our understanding is limited to doing whatever it takes to not die. So no can do. Zarkath leaned back, evidently frustrated. Your obstinacy will be your undoing. Wouldn't be the first time, Drayton replied, shooting Varga a look. We'll take that under advisement, though. Anything else? The alien general seemed to simmer for a moment, like a pot on the brink of boiling over. You have until my fleet positions itself to reconsider your stance. After that, mercy will be a forgotten concept. The screen went dark, leaving Drayton and Varga in the silence of their own problems. Well, he's a charmer, Varga said, breaking the tension with a chuckle. Couldn't even throw in a please or thank you. Drayton sighed, rubbing the bridge of his nose. Typical alien diplomacy. Threats first, questions never. So what's the plan, Captain? Varga asked. Ready to throw in the towel. Throw in the towel, Drayton echoed, his tone one of mock incredulity. And miss out on all this fun, not a chance. He straightened up, a glint of defiance in his eyes. We'll keep our little science project under wraps as much as possible, but we're not stopping. If Zarkath wants a fight, we'll make sure it's one he won't forget. Varga nodded, her own resolve hardening. And if we accidentally blow up a few of his ships in the process, all the better. Drayton grinned, feeling the familiar rush of adrenaline that came with thumbing his nose at danger. Exactly. Let's give them something to remember us by. The station's lights flickered once more, but they held steady, as if reflecting the renewed determination of its human occupants. The universe might be a cold, uncaring void, but that didn't mean they had to go quietly into it. "Let's crank up the energy output," Varga suggested, already recalibrating the systems. "Make it look like we're doing maintenance. Keep them guessing." "Good idea," Drayton agreed. "And if we can reroute some of that excess power to our shields, it might give us enough of a buffer to survive the first wave." Varga's fingers danced over the controls, her mind a whirlwind of numbers and probabilities. "We'll need to balance it carefully. Too much power in one area and we risk overloading the system." "Well, nothing like a good balancing act to keep us on our toes," Drayton said with a wry smile. As Varga worked, Drayton moved to the station's PA system, his voice ringing out across the Prometheus. "Attention all personnel. We've got a bit of a situation on our hands. Alien fleets decided we're the main course for tonight's entertainment. I suggest everyone gets ready for a bit of turbulence." He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in before continuing. "But don't worry. If we're going down, we'll make sure to at least give them some indigestion." The announcement done, he returned to Varga's side, watching as she deftly adjusted the station's power distribution. "All set. As ready as we'll ever be," she replied, her expression a mix of determination and grim amusement. They shared a brief, silent moment, acknowledging the absurdity and the gravity of their situation with a shared glance. "In the end, it's just another day in paradise," Drayton said, breaking the silence with a sardonic chuckle. Varga nodded, her fingers pausing for a heartbeat before resuming their tasks. "A paradise that wants to kill us, but yeah." The alien fleet loomed closer on their displays, a reminder that the universe was vast, unfriendly, and eager to crush their hopes like an overripe fruit. Yet they were not cowed. If there was one thing humans excelled at, it was defying expectations, and sometimes even gravity. As the Prometheus hummed with its newfound energy, Drayton and Varga prepared for what was sure to be an unforgettable encounter. The stakes were as high as the odds were long, but they'd come this far. There was no turning back now. With a final nod to each other, they braced for the impending storm, ready to face whatever fresh hell the universe had decided to throw their way. And in that moment, poised on the brink of chaos, they found a strange kind of peace, knowing they were alive, stubborn, and unyielding in a cosmos that seemed hell-bent on reminding them of their insignificance. "Let's give them hell," Drayton said, his voice low and steady. Varga grinned, the fire of defiance burning bright in her eyes. "Hell it is." As the alien fleet closed in and the Prometheus stood defiant in the swirling sea of stars, the universe watched, indifferent as always. But for two humans adrift in its endless expanse, that didn't matter. They were ready. The Prometheus was a creaking, groaning relic of human ambition, orbiting a star that was about half a sneeze away from giving up the ghost. If ever there was a fitting metaphor for the human race, this was it. A ramshackle station held together by duct tape, hope, and the stubbornness of its inhabitants. And right now, its occupants were facing a not-so-friendly visit from General Zarkath and his merry band of planet busters. Drayton was in the command center, a room dimly lit by the flickering displays and the occasional spark from an overworked console. It was the kind of place where optimism came to die, but today it was positively humming with activity, a hive of desperate ingenuity. Varga was already buried in equations, her mind working overtime to make sense of the chaos. "You know," she said without looking up, "if we pull this off, we should demand a raise." Drayton snorted, leaning over her shoulder. "Pretty sure our reward will be not dying horribly. Seems like the standard package these days." "Ah, the benefits of working in space. Endless views, constant threat of annihilation," Varga muttered, her fingers dancing over her tablet. Nearby, a junior officer named Tamsin was watching the fleet's approach. "Captain, those ships are getting cozy. Any brilliant strategies up your sleeve?" Drayton rubbed his chin, pretending to mull it over. "Well, we could try asking them nicely to leave, or we could figure out how to use their collective bad breath against them." Tamsin frowned, clearly not in the mood for jokes, though in this crew that was like oxygen. Necessary but too often in short supply. Seriously, sir. All right, Drayton conceded, shifting gears. Varga, any chance you can crank up that new theory of yours to something other than a death sentence? Working on it, she replied through gritted teeth. This isn't exactly plug-and-play, you know. Right. Well, let me know when it is, Drayton said, turning his attention back to the console. In the meantime, we need to stall, find a way to make them hesitate. Varga stopped, her eyes narrowing in thought. If we could simulate a reactor overload, it might delay them. They'll think we're already about to blow ourselves to hell. And when they scan the station, Drayton asked. Varga shrugged. We fake the data. Maybe we shake a few bits loose, make it look real. It's not like they know our systems inside out. Good idea. It might just buy us the time we need, Drayton agreed. He motioned to Tamsin. Get on it. Make it look like we're about to go supernova. Tamsin nodded, already relaying instructions to the engineering team. You got it, sir. One fake catastrophe coming right up. As she worked, Varga's attention was drawn to her display, a sudden change catching her eye. Hold on. There's something odd here. Drayton leaned closer. Odd how? One of their ships is broadcasting a signal, Varga explained, tapping a few buttons. It's encrypted, but it's not aimed at us. It's like they're talking to themselves. Internal comms, maybe, Drayton suggested, though he didn't sound convinced. No, this is different, Varga said, her voice tinged with curiosity. More like a feedback loop. I think they're testing their own systems. Drayton straightened, a thought occurring to him. Could it be a vulnerability? Varga's eyes lit up with a mixture of excitement and disbelief. Possibly. If we can break into that signal, it might disrupt their fleet's coordination. That's a big if, Drayton pointed out. And a bigger risk. If it doesn't work, we'll be handing them our asses on a silver platter. Yeah, well, if we don't try it, we might not have asses left to hand over, Varga replied, her fingers racing to decode the signal. I'll need time, and we're running low on that. Drayton nodded, reaching for the PA system again. Attention all personnel, he announced, his voice echoing through the corridors. We're about to execute a plan that's either going to save our skins or get us all fried. Either way, hold onto something solid. He turned back to Varga, who was already knee-deep in alien algorithms. Get us something good, Doc. I'm on it, Varga replied, her voice steady but determined. Just keep them off our backs long enough. As Drayton relayed orders, the station felt like a tightly wound spring. Everyone was on edge, knowing that in the next few hours they could be heroes or they could be space dust. Meanwhile, Tamsin was making progress with their decoy. Captain, fake overload is almost ready. We should be able to convince them we're one button away from a fireworks show. Excellent, Drayton said, clapping her on the back. Now let's see if the good general appreciates our performance. The alien fleet continued its slow approach, the lead ship a looming shadow against the backdrop of the cosmos. Zarkath's vessel was at the center, an ugly hunk of metal that looked like it wanted to pick a fight with any asteroid that dared cross its path. Drayton unmuted their communication channel, hoping to extend their farce a little longer. General Zarkath, we've had a bit of a technical hiccup on our end. Might want to hold off until we sort it. The alien's face appeared again, looking about as amused as a cat at a dog convention. Your deception is transparent, Captain. We are prepared to proceed regardless. Ah, but see, if we go first, you'll miss out on all the fun, Drayton said with a grin that only served to further irritate the general. Zarkath's eyes narrowed to slits. Your time is almost up, human. We will not wait much longer. Let's hope Varga finds something before much longer turns into too late, Drayton muttered, cutting the link. Varga was deep into her work, deciphering the alien code with an intensity that bordered on obsession. I think I've got it, she said, her voice a mixture of triumph and disbelief. Great. What's the plan? Drayton asked, moving to her side. We piggyback on their signal, inject a virus into their system, and hope it throws them into disarray, Varga explained. It might give us the opening we need. Might, Drayton echoed, though he already knew the answer. It's all we've got, Varga replied, offering a thin, humorless smile. Besides, isn't that the human way? Throw everything at the wall and see what sticks. Drayton chuckled, nodding. All right, let's make it rain. With the station's fake overload set and their virus ready to deploy, the crew of the Prometheus braced for impact. It felt like standing on the edge of a cliff, knowing the only way forward was down and hoping to hell there was something soft at the bottom. Tamsin was monitoring the alien fleet, her face a mask of focus. They're holding position, sir. Looks like they're trying to scan us. Well, let's hope our little performance is convincing, Drayton said. Varga, on your mark. Varga nodded, her hands steady as she initiated the virus. It was a long shot, but then long shots were the only shots they had left. As the virus infiltrated the alien systems, an eerie quiet spread across the command center. The tension was palpable, a living thing that coiled around them, squeezing tighter with each passing second. Drayton watched the screens, waiting for any sign that their gamble had paid off. Come on, he muttered under his breath, willing the universe to give them a break for once. Then, like a miracle in the void, the alien fleet hesitated. Ships that had been moving in perfect sync began to drift, their formations breaking apart. Varga let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. I think it's working. Drayton allowed himself a small smile, the first genuine one in what felt like years. Looks like we just bought ourselves some time. As the alien ships faltered, the Prometheus came alive with activity. Drayton's crew sprang into action, capitalizing on the disarray. It was a small victory, but in the grand scheme of things, it was a lifeline. We need to reinforce our defenses while they're off balance, Drayton ordered, his mind racing with possibilities. And prep our escape routes just in case. Varga nodded, her focus shifting to the next challenge. I'll see if we can boost our shields any further. We've got to be ready if they regroup. Their brief respite was a testament not to their invincibility, but to their tenacity. Humans weren't the toughest or the smartest species in the universe, but they were damn good at surviving by the skin of their teeth. Drayton surveyed his crew, their faces a mix of grim determination and cautious hope. All right, people, we've got ourselves a fighting chance. Let's make sure we use it. The room buzzed with renewed energy, the crew rallying around their shared sense of purpose. It was like a cosmic joke gone right, the underdogs managing to slip through the jaws of defeat once again. As Varga continued to tweak their systems, Drayton kept a watchful eye on the alien fleet. The pause in their attack wasn't going to last forever, and they needed every second they could get. Think they'll realize what's happening? Tamsin asked, glancing at the tactical display. If they do, let's hope we're not around to see it, Drayton replied, his tone a mix of humor and caution. Varga flashed him a rare grin. Besides, who says they get all the fun? Maybe we'll leave them with a few surprises of our own. Drayton chuckled, shaking his head. That's the spirit. Now let's see how much we can mess up their day. As the Prometheus continued its delicate dance with destruction, the crew of misfits and mavericks pushed forward, driven by the sheer audacity of hope. They were a ragtag bunch in a rundown station, but in that moment, they stood defiant against the vast indifference of the universe. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. The command center of the Prometheus was a study in organized chaos. Panels blinked, clanked, and occasionally spat sparks like a drunk trying to light a cigarette in a hurricane. Despite the grim atmosphere, Drayton found a moment to lean back in his creaky chair, the official throne of the damned, and take in the misfortune with a certain dark amusement. Well, Varga, he began, throwing a glance at the scientist who was buried elbow-deep in glowing equations. Ever think you'd end up spending your Saturday night like this? Varga didn't look up, her fingers dancing over the tablet like a pianist in the middle of a funeral concerto. Beats last Saturday's poker game. At least here I can lose with a bit more dignity. You call this dignity? Drayton asked, gesturing to the command center that looked one power surge away from a fireworks finale. If we pull this off, then yes, Varga replied, finally meeting his eyes with a wry smile. If we don't, well, we won't be around to worry about it, will we? Meanwhile, Tamsin hovered over her station, eyes glued to the tactical display. Captain, those aliens are getting restless, she reported. Might as well be watching a kettle, but this one's about to boil over. Drayton turned to her with a grin that was more gallows than humor. Guess we'll find out if we're the frogs or the chefs, huh? As if in response, the lighting dimmed further, casting long shadows that seemed to inch closer like vultures. The alien fleet, no longer content to watch the humans flounder, began their advance, a slow, menacing crawl across the void. Looks like they're ready to start the party without us, Drayton muttered, eyeing the alien ships creeping ever closer. Time to test how well our decoy holds up. Assuming they don't just decide to blow us up as a finale, Varga added, the cynicism in her voice palpable. The fake reactor overload had been a stroke of ingenuity or desperation, depending on who you asked. But with the aliens advancing, it was clear they'd need more than smoke and mirrors to survive this encounter. We're getting some interference on the comms, Captain, Tamsin announced, frowning at her console. Could be they're trying to jam us, or they're just singing their war songs. Either way, it's not a lullaby, Drayton said, leaning over to peer at the tangled display of signals. Let's hope our virus keeps them dancing to our tune a little longer. A sudden shudder ran through the station, as if the Prometheus itself was groaning in protest. The dying star they orbited, a cosmic monster with a sense of humor blacker than deep space, was throwing its weight around again, adding instability to their already precarious situation. Just what we needed, Varga sighed, her sarcasm as sharp as a fragment of shattered hull. A star having a tantrum. What next? A meteor shower invitation. You know, I was just wishing for one of those, Drayton replied, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. The universe just loves to keep us on our toes. In the face of mounting odds, the crew fought to maintain some semblance of normalcy, if normalcy included putting out literal and metaphorical fires. Drayton moved through the command center, issuing orders with the calm of a man who'd long since accepted the absurdity of it all. Tamsin, keep an eye on those ships. If they twitch, I want to know, he barked, moving to Varga's side. And you, Doc, any chance of giving our shields a little more juice? Varga didn't look up, her fingers a blur. I'll see what I can do, but this station's as tired as I am, and she's not as easy to bribe with caffeine. Drayton chuckled, the sound brittle in the tension-filled air. Well, do your best to caffeinate her. We might need every bit of pep we can muster. The alien ships were drawing closer, their ominous silhouettes a stark reminder of the stakes. General Zarkath's vessel led the charge, an unholy amalgamation of metal and menace that seemed to leer at the Prometheus with predatory intent. Drayton glanced at the tactical display, noting the encroaching threat with the air of a man evaluating a bad hand at a high-stakes poker table. Looks like the party's about to start, he observed dryly. Hope you brought your dancing shoes, Varga quipped, eyes never leaving her screen. Looks like we're in for a hell of an opening number. As if on cue, the Prometheus shuddered violently, lights flickering as if undecided about staying on. The alien fleet launched a surprise assault, overwhelming the station's defenses with a volley of concentrated energy blasts. The command center erupted into chaos, alarms wailing like banshees as the station groaned under the onslaught. Sparks flew from overloaded consoles, and in the midst of it all, Varga and Drayton clung to their stations, riding the storm. "We're taking hits, Captain," Tamsin yelled, her voice cutting through the cacophony. "Shields are buckling. Keep us together, damn it," Drayton shouted, though he knew their odds were slim at best. The Prometheus was held together by little more than stubbornness and sheer willpower, assets that didn't count for much against alien firepower. Varga's hands flew over her tablet, trying to coax more life out of systems that were already on death's door. "I'm rerouting power from non-essential systems," she called out, her voice strained but determined. If this station had any less to give, it'd be borrowing from next week. Just keep us afloat, Drayton replied, his tone grim. We're not dead yet. The alien assault intensified, battering the Prometheus with relentless precision. Crew members scrambled to contain the damage, their faces set in grim resolve as they fought against the tide. We've lost a section on Deck C, Tamsin reported, her voice tight with urgency. Casualties are high, damn aliens are picking us apart. Drayton swore under his breath, his mind racing as he scanned the chaotic scene. Each decision felt like playing chess with a madman, every move met with escalating threats. Divert more power to the shields, he ordered, his voice a lifeline amidst the chaos. And get those wounded to the med bay. We need every able body. As the Prometheus reeled under the alien barrage, hope dwindled like a candle in a storm. Drayton and Varga were pushed to their limits, their every effort a desperate bid to stave off the inevitable. Captain, Varga called out, her voice weary but unyielding. We need to think of a contingency. If this keeps up, we're not going to hold. Drayton nodded, a heavy weight settling in his stomach. I know, Lisbeth, we're running out of options and time. The star outside pulsed with malevolent energy, its dying throes echoing the station's plight. As if mocking their struggle, the universe seemed intent on reminding them of their insignificance. Zarkath isn't pulling any punches, Tamsin remarked, her voice edged with a resigned fatalism. Guess he decided he's bored with our little charade. Can't say I blame him, Drayton replied, a bitter smile tugging at his lips. We're not exactly the most entertaining act in town. In the face of overwhelming odds, the crew of the Prometheus held fast, their defiance a testament not to their strength but their sheer bloody-mindedness. Against a universe that delighted in their suffering, they stood as stubborn as the station they fought to protect. Varga continued her efforts to stabilize their systems, her mind a whirl of calculations and algorithms. I might have an idea, she said hesitantly, but it's a long shot. Drayton turned to her, a flicker of hope in his eyes. At this point, I'll take any shot. What have you got? We could use the star, Varga proposed, her tone both daring and desperate. If we can trigger a controlled flare, it might be enough to knock them off balance. The star. You mean the same star that's trying its best to destroy us? Drayton asked incredulously. I didn't say it was a good idea, Varga replied with a crooked grin. But it's the only ace we've got left. Drayton considered her proposal, the weight of their predicament pressing down on him. It was risky, reckless even. But then, when had they ever played it safe? All right, let's do it, he decided, clapping Varga on the shoulder. Make it happen, Doc. Let's give them a show they won't forget. The command center buzzed with a tense energy as Varga set to work, her fingers flying across her tablet with renewed purpose. The crew watched, their hopes pinned on this last-ditch effort to turn the tide. Tamsin kept a watchful eye on the alien fleet, her expression grim but determined. They're closing in, Captain, if this doesn't work. It will, Drayton interrupted, his voice firm. We've come this far, Tamsin. We're not going down without a fight. As Varga initiated the sequence, the station shuddered, energy coursing through its battered systems like a jolt of adrenaline. It was a gamble, but then, what choice did they have? The star outside flared, its surface writhing with volatile energy. It was a spectacle as awe-inspiring as it was deadly, a reminder of the power they sought to harness. The alien fleet hesitated, the sudden flare disrupting their advance. For a brief, shining moment, it seemed they might have bought themselves a reprieve. But as the light faded, the reality of their situation returned with brutal clarity. The alien ships regrouped, their resolve unbroken. Well, that was fun while it lasted, Tamsin quipped, her voice tinged with dark humor. Guess we'll have to find another way to keep them entertained. Drayton nodded, the weight of their predicament settling back on his shoulders. They were out of tricks, out of time, but not out of fight. All right, people, he called out, rallying his crew for what might be their final stand. We gave them a hell of a scare. Now let's see if we can make it last. As the crew of the Prometheus prepared to face the oncoming storm, they did so with the knowledge that they were not alone. Together, they stood defiant against the vast indifference of the universe, a ragtag band of survivors refusing to go quietly into the night. And maybe, just maybe, that would be enough. The command center felt like the belly of a beast on the verge of indigestion, electronic guts sparking, alarms screaming, and the crew caught somewhere between exhilaration and terror. Drayton surveyed the chaos, his mind a melange of half-formed strategies and outright panic. The alien fleet had regrouped, their ships hovering like a pack of wolves eyeing a wounded animal. Prometheus wasn't just wounded, it was bleeding out, and the smell of doom was pretty damn pungent. "Varga," Drayton called over the din, marching towards her like a man with a purpose, even if he wasn't quite sure what that purpose was yet. "Tell me you've got a miracle tucked away in that brain of yours." "If I did, I'd be selling it to the highest bidder," Lisbeth Varga replied, her fingers dancing over her tablet with the precision of a concert pianist at the brink of an encore. "But I've got something close, a theory that's either going to save us or ensure we're remembered as a cautionary tale." "Go on, Doc." Drayton leaned in, skepticism plastered all over his face. "I'm all ears, mostly because I can't afford to be anything else right now." Varga shot him a sidelong glance, her expression a blend of amusement and exasperation. "All right, Captain. Here's the gist. We leverage the star's instability. Trigger a flare at just the right frequency and angle, and it could act like an EMP. Knock their systems offline long enough for us to get the hell out of Dodge." "And how exactly do we avoid getting fried in the process?" Drayton asked, as if asking whether there was a vegan option on the menu. "That," Varga admitted with a grin that was a little too wide for comfort, "is the tricky part. We'll need to shield ourselves by rerouting power from every non-essential system and hope the station holds together long enough to ride it out." Drayton let out a low whistle. "So, we're talking about winning the lottery while simultaneously dodging a sniper's bullet." "How comforting. More like winning the lottery while the cashier holds you at gunpoint," Varga corrected. "But it's the only ace we've got left, unless you fancy negotiating with Zarkath using interpretive dance." Drayton barked a laugh, nearly choked by the irony of his own amusement. "Not my forte. All right, let's light this candle. Tamsin, spread the word." "We're going for broke." Tamsin nodded, her eyes flicking from the tactical display to Drayton. "You got it, Captain. Just let me know when to start praying." "Now's as good a time as any," Drayton replied, his voice a cocktail of resolve and resignation. "Tell the crew to brace themselves. It's about to get a whole lot hotter in here." With orders relayed, the crew set about their tasks like soldiers marching into the jaws of hell. They were a ragtag band, engineers, scientists, technicians, each one clinging to their own brand of hope and bravado. And at the center of it all, Varga worked her magic, eyes narrowed, mind racing against time and logic. The universe, as it turned out, was not inclined to cooperate. A fresh volley from the alien fleet rocked the station, the impact reverberating through the command center like the death knell of a forgotten god. "We're running out of time, Varga," Drayton said, his voice a strained whisper over the chaos. "If you've got any tricks left, now's the time to pull them out." Varga didn't respond immediately, her focus locked on the scrolling equations on her tablet. It was like watching someone trying to defuse a bomb armed with nothing but a rubber band and sheer willpower. Finally, she looked up, eyes alight with a renewed sense of purpose. "All right, Captain, we're ready. On my mark, we trigger the flare. Everyone else hold onto something and try not to die." "Sound advice," Drayton quipped. "Let's do it." The moment hung in the air, pregnant with tension, as Varga initiated the sequence. The station trembled, systems straining under the demand for power. It felt like coaxing an old horse into a final race, one last burst of speed before the inevitable collapse. "Engage," Varga commanded, her voice slicing through the noise. The star responded, flaring with a brilliance that seared the blackness of space, a cosmic tantrum that sent ripples through the void. It was a spectacle of raw, untamed energy, beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. The alien fleet hesitated, their formation disrupted as systems flickered and died. For one glorious fleeting moment, Prometheus had the upper hand. "Now!" Drayton roared, his voice the rallying cry of a man who refused to bow to fate. The crew sprang into action, rerouting power, stabilizing systems, doing everything in their power to keep the station from tearing itself apart. It was a dance with disaster, each step precarious, every movement fraught with peril. The flare subsided, leaving behind a stunned silence that felt like the universe holding its breath. Drayton looked around the command center, taking in the faces of his crew, exhausted, battered, but unbroken. "Report," he barked, breaking the spell. Tamsin was the first to respond, her voice shaky but triumphant. "It worked, at least for now. Their systems are down, but they're already scrambling to recover." "And us?" Drayton asked, bracing for the worst. "Shields are holding barely," Varga replied, wiping sweat from her brow. "But we're not out of the woods yet. We've bought ourselves some time, but not much else." Drayton nodded, a grim smile tugging at his lips. "Then we make the most of it. Start repairs, prep for another attack." "We're not giving up, not while we're still breathing." The crew set to work, each one driven by the shared determination to survive. It was a testament to their resilience, their refusal to go gentle into that good night. "Captain," Varga said quietly, drawing Drayton's attention, "I know this isn't the outcome any of us wanted, but we did it. Against every odd, we did it." Drayton met her gaze, the weight of their shared ordeal etched in every line of his face. "Yeah, we did. And if the universe thinks it can just waltz in and finish the job, it's got another thing coming." As if in response to his defiance, the command center shuddered, a reminder that the universe was still very much in play. But for the first time, it felt like a battle they had a chance of winning. With renewed vigor, the crew of the Prometheus worked to fortify their battered home, driven by a mixture of desperation and hope. They were a defiant blip in the grand tapestry of space, fragile, flawed, and stubborn as hell. "Varga," Drayton said, turning to face her. "Got any more miracles up your sleeve?" Varga chuckled, a sound that was both weary and hopeful. "Depends on your definition of a miracle, Captain. But if stubbornness counts, then yeah, I think we've got a few more left." "Good," Drayton replied, his voice steady and sure. "Because we're going to need every last one of them. The universe might have been intent on their destruction, but for now, Prometheus held steady. And as long as there was breath in their lungs and defiance in their hearts, they would fight on, a testament to the unyielding human spirit. And maybe, just maybe, that would be enough to tip the scales in their favor." The command center was still shaking like a drunk on a Friday night, which pretty much summed up the vibe on the Prometheus. A battered tin can held together by more wishful thinking than actual engineering. Drayton stood in the middle of the chaos, every part of him screaming to sit down and have a long, existential cry. But nothing screamed leader, quite like standing when everyone else was losing their heads, or at least pretending you weren't part of the impending doom. "All right, folks," he yelled over the wailing alarms. "We've managed to avoid getting flash-fried, but we're not out of this mess yet. Let's show these alien bastards why humans have survived this long. Time for the counterattack." Varga looked up from her tablet, her face a masterpiece of disbelief and dry wit. "Nothing says welcome to human hospitality like a good old-fashioned ass-kicking, huh, Captain?" "You got it," Drayton replied, an edge of manic energy coloring his voice. "Let's make sure they remember who's the real top dog in this galaxy. That would be us still breathing, right?" Tamsin chimed in, her fingers flying over the tactical display. Her eyes were fixed on the alien fleet, which was currently struggling to comprehend that they'd been outwitted by a station that ranked somewhere between relic and space junk. "Can't argue with that logic, Tamsin," Drayton conceded. "Let's keep it that way." The observation window revealed a vista of pure chaos, alien ships floundering in the void, scrambling to regain control. The EMP had hit them like a cosmic sucker punch, and the Prometheus crew was ready to capitalize. "Okay, Varga," Drayton said, moving to her side. Now that we've managed to piss them off, how do we make sure they don't recover? Varga grinned, a feral gleam in her eyes. Oh, I've got a few ideas. If we can hit them while their shields are down, it might just be enough to send them packing. In other words, Drayton said, kick them while they're down. Exactly, Varga replied. We've got a window, but it's closing fast. Drayton nodded, turning to his crew. All right, people, this is it. We're either going to be the most celebrated crew in history or a footnote in the annals of stupidity. I know which I'd prefer. The crew sprang into action with the kind of desperate efficiency that only impending death can produce. Consoles lit up like Christmas trees, data streams flowing faster than bad gossip at a family reunion. Captain, Tamsin called out, I've got a lock on their command ship. If we take it out, the rest should follow. Do it, Drayton ordered, the adrenaline surging through him like a shot of pure caffeine. He watched as the tactical display illuminated with targeting data, every number a reminder of how close they were to either triumph or oblivion. Firing solution ready, Tamsin reported, her voice steady despite the chaos. Fire at will, Drayton commanded, feeling the weight of the moment settle over him like an ill-fitting coat. The Prometheus shuddered as its cannons discharged, sending a salvo of destruction barreling toward the alien command ship. The projectiles cut through the void, driven by the kind of human determination that had built pyramids, scaled mountains, and now aimed to rewrite the playbook on interstellar warfare. Impact in 3, 2, Tamsin counted down, the tension palpable. The alien command ship lurched as the first salvo struck, a burst of energy cascading over its hull. The second wave followed, breaching its already weakened defenses. It was an intricate dance of destruction, every hit a testament to the crew's resolve, and perhaps their desperation. Direct hit, Tamsin announced, unable to keep the triumph from her voice. The alien ship listed, caught in a spiral that spoke volumes about its imminent demise. It was a beautiful thing, in a grim, this was their own damn fault kind of way. Nice shooting, Drayton said, allowing himself a brief moment of satisfaction. Now let's see how the rest of them like their odds. As if on cue, the alien fleet's formations began to waver, the ships moving with a kind of frantic aimlessness that spoke to their panic. It was like watching a school of fish react to a predator, disorganized, chaotic, and utterly vulnerable. Looks like they're reconsidering their life choices, Varga noted dryly, her eyes never leaving her tablet's screen. I can't say I blame them. Drayton chuckled, the sound more relief than amusement. Well, it's about time they realized we're not just here for decoration. A new flurry of activity on the tactical display caught his attention. The alien ships were retreating, pulling back in disarray, their previous arrogance shattered by the realization that humans weren't the easy prey they'd imagined. We did it, Tamsin breathed, the awe in her voice mirrored by the disbelief etched on every face in the command center. Don't celebrate just yet, Drayton cautioned. They'll be back. Let's make sure we're ready when they do. The universe might have handed them the short end of the stick time and again, but for once, they'd managed to carve out a victory, however temporary. They'd bought themselves a reprieve, a chance to breathe, to regroup. General Zarkath's fleet is retreating, Varga reported, her voice laced with a mixture of relief and exhaustion. It looks like we've managed to stave off annihilation for today. Drayton nodded, a smile tugging at his lips despite the sweat, the adrenaline, and the nagging fear that this was only a temporary win. Well, that was easy, wasn't it? Piece of cake, Varga replied, sarcasm dripping from her words like melted ice cream on a hot sidewalk. I can't wait to see what they throw at us next. Hopefully something less life-threatening, Drayton said, resting his weary body against a console. But something tells me the universe isn't done with us yet. General Zarkath's admission came through on the comms, a grudging acknowledgement of human tenacity. Your resilience is noted. This encounter is far from over, and here I thought we could part as friends, Drayton replied, his voice a cocktail of defiance and mockery. But don't worry, we'll be ready for your next attempt at socializing. As the communication cut out, Drayton took a deep breath, the reality of their situation settling over him like a cold fog. They'd won a battle, but the war was far from over. And yet, in the face of overwhelming odds, they'd refused to bow. "All right, folks," he called out, his voice carrying through the command center like a rallying cry. "Let's get to work. We've got repairs to make and a station to hold together. Let's show the universe what we're made of." The crew set to work with a renewed sense of purpose, driven by the knowledge that they'd defied the odds once and could do it again. They were battered, weary, but unbroken, humanity's finest, holding the line against a universe that seemed determined to grind them into dust. Varga approached Drayton, a weary smile playing on her lips. "You know, Captain, I think we might just have what it takes to survive this after all." Drayton met her gaze, a wry grin breaking through the fatigue. "Let's not get ahead of ourselves. We've still got a long way to go, but yeah, maybe we've got a fighting chance." With the alien threat momentarily averted, the Prometheus crew regrouped, their spirits lifted by the unexpected victory. It was a reminder that even in the darkest of circumstances, there was still hope, still a reason to fight. "Drayton," Tamsin said, her voice cutting through the noise. "You think they'll be back soon?" Drayton shrugged, the gesture as tired as he felt. "Probably, but next time they'll know we're not just going to roll over and die." "Here's to hoping they learn their lesson," Varga added, her voice a blend of humor and resolve. "Yeah," Drayton agreed, his gaze drifting to the stars beyond the observation window. "Here's to hope." As the crew of the Prometheus worked to reinforce their beleaguered station, Drayton allowed himself a moment of quiet reflection. They'd pulled off a miracle, but at what cost? The universe was vast, uncaring, and infinitely dangerous. But for now, they'd earned a reprieve, a chance to breathe, to regroup, to live. And as long as there was a breath in his body, Drayton knew they would keep fighting, keep resisting, keep defying the odds. Because against the vast indifference of the universe, what else was there to do? "Varga," Drayton said, turning to her with a thoughtful expression. "What's the next step in your theory?" Varga paused, considering the question. "We need to find a way to stabilize our power systems long term." "I might have a few ideas, but it'll take time, and maybe another miracle or two." Drayton nodded, a weary determination settling over him. "Well, we've gotten this far. Let's see if we can keep defying the odds." Together, they turned their attention back to the work at hand, driven by the knowledge that the fight was far from over. But in that moment, standing amidst the chaos and uncertainty, they were united, defiant, resilient, and ready for whatever came next. And maybe, just maybe, that would be enough to tip the scales in their favor. The Prometheus had seen better days, but then again, so had Captain Arlo Drayton. The station groaned around him like an old man getting out of bed, a chorus of clanks and hisses that somehow hadn't transformed into a funeral dirge. Yet, the command center was a mess of sparks and flickering screens, holding together with the same stubborn refusal to die that seemed to define its crew. "Right, folks," Drayton announced with the enthusiasm of a man about to head into dental surgery. "We've got a temporary reprieve, so let's make it count. Repairs don't happen by themselves, though if anyone's got a magic wand, now's the time to use it." Tamsin, still glued to the tactical display like it held the secrets of the universe, snorted. "If I had a magic wand, I'd be on a beach somewhere, sipping something with an umbrella in it." "Focus, Tamsin," Drayton replied, though he couldn't help but share a wry smile. "Get us a beach and I'll bring the umbrellas, Doctor." Lisbeth Varga was busy tapping away at her tablet, her expression a mix of concentration and mild irritation. "This isn't going to be easy, you know. Stabilizing the power systems is a bit more complicated than sticking a band-aid on a bullet wound." Drayton nodded. "I'm counting on your genius, Varga. I mean, I could try reading those equations on your tablet, but they might as well be in ancient Martian." Varga smirked. "They probably make more sense in ancient Martian." She swiped at the screen, pulling up a schematic of the station's beleaguered power grid. But seriously, if we don't get this right, we're looking at a long, cold drift into oblivion. Oblivion's overrated, Drayton quipped. It's like the universe's way of saying, I told you so. Meanwhile, the rest of the crew was knee-deep in the guts of the station, patching up what they could with whatever scraps they had lying around. It was a bit like trying to fix a leaky boat with chewing gum and sheer willpower, but it was all they had and they'd make it work. Hopefully. Captain, Varga said, eyes fixed on her tablet, I've been thinking. If we can stabilize the power systems, we might be able to turn this whole mess into an advantage. Oh, Drayton raised an eyebrow, intrigued despite himself. Do tell. It's all about energy distribution, Varga explained, her fingers a blur over the tablet screen. Our little EMP stunt showed us that we've got more potential than we thought. If we can harness it correctly, we might be able to turn the station's vulnerabilities into strengths. Drayton chuckled, a sound that was more sardonic than joyous. Turning a death trap into a fortress. Ambitious. I like it. Varga glanced at him, her smile one of those rare, genuine ones that only appeared when she was on the cusp of a breakthrough. It's not just about survival. It's about showing that we can adapt, even when the universe throws a dumpster fire our way. Drayton nodded, feeling a glimmer of hope, a dangerous thing, but he was starting to think they might have a shot. Then let's get to it. As the crew worked like the underpaid, overstressed heroes they were, Drayton took a moment to himself, leaning against the observation window. Space stretched out before him, vast, indifferent, beautiful in a way that made you feel like the tiniest speck in a colossal void. And yet here they were, humans holding the line against an uncaring universe. Well, Prometheus, he murmured to the battered station, looks like we're not done yet. Back in the command center, Varga was pulling up another set of calculations, her fingers flying over the tablet with the precision of a concert pianist. We need to redistribute the energy flow, she said, mostly to herself. If we can avoid overloading any one part of the grid, we can keep this bucket of bolts running. Bucket of bolts, Tamsin piped up, glancing over. That's optimistic, Varga snorted. Would you prefer collection of impending catastrophes? Both work, Tamsin replied with a shrug. As long as we don't end up as stardust. We won't, Drayton interjected, his voice carrying the kind of determined confidence that came from years of practice, even if he didn't entirely believe it himself. We've faced worse. Varga nodded, her eyes alight with the kind of fire that suggested she'd take on the universe with a spoon if it came down to it. I'm banking on the fact that we're too stubborn to fail. Stubbornness, Drayton mused, the cornerstone of human survival. While the crew patched up what they could and Varga continued her calculations, the Prometheus settled into a tense sort of quiet, one that suggested a cautious optimism, or perhaps the eye of a storm. The alien fleet had retreated, but Drayton knew it was only a matter of time before General Zarkath and his merry band of planet busters returned for round two. How's it looking? Drayton asked, joining Varga at her console. Like a math problem from hell, Varga replied, not looking up. But we might just have enough juice to keep the lights on and the air flowing. Drayton gave a mock salute. Better than suffocating in the dark, Tamsin, ever the realist, chimed in. And if the aliens come back with a vengeance, we improvise, Drayton said. We're good at that. He turned his attention to the tactical display, noting the alien fleet's last known positions, a collection of blips scattered across a star map like confetti at a very hostile party. They'd been lucky this time, but luck had a tendency to run out just when you started to rely on it. Drayton, Varga said, her voice softer now, I've been thinking about what this means. If we can stabilize the power systems, this isn't just a patch job. It's a new beginning. Drayton met her gaze, seeing the flicker of hope there, and something else, something that looked suspiciously like redemption. You're saying we might actually turn this death trap into a beacon of hope, Varga shrugged, an almost shy gesture for someone who'd stared down equations that could make a grown man cry. Why not? If we can show that we can adapt and innovate, maybe the universe will think twice before trying to snuff us out. Drayton gave a short, barked laugh. That, or it'll try even harder. Either way, we're not going down without a fight. Varga smiled, a touch of steel in her eyes. Wouldn't have it any other way. With the alien threat temporarily at bay and Varga's ideas swirling with promise, the crew of the Prometheus set to work with renewed vigor. They were a motley bunch, brash, irreverent, and possibly a little unhinged, but they were also resilient, determined to hold their own against odds that would have made lesser beings curl up and cry. "Keep it up, people," Drayton called out, his voice cutting through the command center's hum. "We're not just fighting for survival. We're fighting to show the universe that humanity's not done yet." As he watched his crew dive back into their work, Drayton felt a surge of pride, an emotion he'd thought long buried beneath layers of cynicism and practicality. They were battered, bruised, but unbroken, and perhaps, just perhaps, they were on the cusp of something great. "Varga," he said, turning to her with a nod, "keep me posted on our progress. I've got a feeling we're going to need every advantage we can get." "Will do, Captain," Varga replied, her gaze steady and resolved. "Let's make sure the universe knows who it's dealing with." Drayton chuckled, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with the station's struggling life support systems. "Here's to humanity," he said, raising an imaginary glass. "Too stubborn to die, too clever to quit." As the crew of the Prometheus continued their work, the station itself seemed to hum with a renewed energy, as if it too had caught wind of the fiery determination coursing through its corridors. They'd faced down annihilation and lived to tell the tale, and now they were ready to carve their place in the cosmos, one grim, unyielding step at a time. And maybe, just maybe, the universe would take notice. "Drayton," Tamsin called out, her voice breaking through his reverie, "you think we can really pull this off?" Drayton turned, meeting her gaze with an unflinching grin. "If I didn't, we'd already be toast. But we've got something worth fighting for, and that makes all the difference." Tamsin nodded, her expression one of fierce determination. "Then let's make sure they remember us." Together, they turned back to the task at hand, their resolve unwavering. They were the crew of the Prometheus, a ragtag band of survivors in a universe that wouldn't hesitate to snuff them out. But they'd faced the void and come out swinging, and they weren't about to back down now. In that moment, as the stars wheeled beyond the observation window, Drayton realized something important. It wasn't just about survival. It was about defiance, about proving that against all odds humanity would endure. No matter what the universe threw their way, they would fight. And they would win. Because they were human, and that's what humans did.